Okay, and I had this question, and actually the question just popped up from one of our listeners as well, and that's the feedback from CROs about this model. And obviously 10 years ago, you were with a CRO and had folks asking about this, and now you're on the other side, you know, getting their take on what you're trying to do. But do you have any insights on how you think CROs feel about this model? Are they generally receptive to it? Do they seem to be resistant or suspicious of it in some way?
I mean, I think they're generally receptive because this is the nature of the beast, and we are moving in a direction where we do want to align on appropriate costing, and it can save time on both sides. I don't think, you know, I think it is additional work, and does, you know, put some parameters that are in place that weren't in place before. That can be challenging for the CRO, but I do think it's something that our partners have been amenable to. Reb, you have any comments? I know you've been having specific conversations of late with the CROs on this.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. So, I mean, there's a term in negotiations called identifying a zone of mutual agreement. And at the end of the day, I mean, by doing the benchmarking, you kind of take the conversation from a subjective conversation to an objective conversation. You have data that actually drives the discussion. And at the end of the day, I mean, we as a sponsor, we want to make sure we're paying for the right services, and the CRO wants to make sure that they're not losing money. So at the end of the day, I mean, when we have benchmarks and data that help drive the discussion, it's a better outcome for everyone. So you know, how do I think the CROs feel about it? I think they're receptive to it, and we've been very transparent with our partners, so that's what we're doing. And you know, we haven't heard any complaints.
Good. So let me get into, we're coming up on half an hour, but let me just try and get through a few of the questions that have come up. John, I think this one would be for you. Someone asked about benchmarking oncology studies versus others. Is there a difference there or anything that folks need to be aware of?
Well, there is a difference, but there are also aspects that there wouldn't be a difference. I know that doesn't fully answer the question yet, but I'll get into it. There are certain benchmarks, certain activities that are going to be required regardless of the type of study. And so, and some of those are based not necessarily on whether or not it's an oncology trial or another TA or rare disease or whatever it may be, but actually on other types of specifications like the number of CRF pages, and then how long does it take for a monitor to review at a site. Is going to be just as much related to that. And so there's certain things I would say can be universal. And then there are other areas where we do really like to look at particular therapy areas and look to benchmark within that therapy area. We do have, I mentioned rare disease. We do have a number of rare disease studies. Those are a little bit more challenging because they are, I'd say each one is unique in its own right. It becomes a little bit more challenging to compare across. But when you think about a broader oncology portfolio, I'll give you an example of something that we would tend to focus on, which would be in many instances you have sites that only have a handful of patients. And it may be a hard to recruit study, or it may unfortunately be in a patient population that's in late phase cancer, and therefore you have people that don't finish through the trial. What we would want to look at is what does site management look like within that study? How many sites are the CRO assuming are either going to be non-recruiting sites or sites that close early as a result of patients leaving this study earlier than as hoped. That would be something that would be a little bit more unique or specific to an oncology study. And we really do focus on quite a bit because we do find that unfortunately, in many instances, the way in which the work is quoted is it's straight line. And that's not the reality, of course, with studies like that. So we do tend to look at things a little bit differently for oncology and other, but we do that. We try to focus TA by TA at times and pull out the nuances within each TA.